Hello and welcome to Movies and Tea. I'm your host always, Edward Jones, and joining me of course is my co-host, Miss Kim Lowe.
Hello.
Tonight we bring everything to a close for our final episode of Movies and Tea this season. As our Quentin Tarantino season comes to a close with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the 9th film from Quentin Tarantino, and a film which he's frequently said he would be happy to have as his last film, which has been to the great furor of other directors such as like Clint Eastwood, who feel that he's retiring too early, and many of the fans who obviously feel that they're not ready to say goodbye to the wonder kid of independent cinema. But here Tarantino is to give us another alternate history lesson as we follow as what's essentially a changing of the guard in old school Hollywood. The film itself taking place in 1969, following the Hollywood actor Rick Dalton and his stuntman Cliff. The pair friends through their work, and is a friendship that sort of evolved past their work, where they now have this sort of symbiotic relationship where they both sort of depend on each other. At the same time, Rick faces his star power essentially fading as he's worries about the upcoming pilot season, and he's now been gone from being this Hollywood leading man to now playing like the heavies and the bad guys on TV shows, and he's weighing up his options as he's looking at a career essentially making films in Italy. At the same time, actress Sharon Tate and her husband Roman Polanski are new in town. Sharon Tate obviously riding high on the wave of her new success, much like her husband Polanski, who's just made Rosemary's Baby. And meanwhile in the hills, the Manson family are gathering, plotting their own hippie revolution. It's a interesting landscape that Tarantino certainly paints here, but at the same time a tribute to old Hollywood that we will attempt over the course of this episode to break down, because it's a very in-depth film, and one with a very sort of extended runtime, but not one that you really sort of feel, I have to say. But opening thoughts on this one, Kim. I mean, was this the first time watched yourself?
Yes. I guess Tarantino movies I don't really catch right away anyways.
Okay.
The last few have been pretty much first time watches, other than The Hateful Eight, which was, already like 6 years ago, so it's not that recent. But I mean, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is it's pretty fun. I think it's pretty entertaining overall. I have a feeling that these alternate history ones are probably the most fun to watch out of Tarantino's filmography, for me at least. There, you can see some characters, which are part of, people that that exist in real life, and then you have other more fictional characters added to the whole picture. And I think, I don't know. I mean, Leonardo Dicaprio and Brad Pitt really pair up really well, I feel.
Oh, definitely so. I mean, it's an absolute powerhouse casting, and Tarantino himself said that when he was casting the film, he was putting different pairs of actors together, but it was always DiCaprio and Pitt were like his front runners. But at the same time, these are two actors who are booking 7 projects in advance, so for all the stars to sort of align and for them both to be free to film at the same time, it was just complete fate, and sort of written in the stars that this film was going to have those two as his leads. And I think it's looking at the alternatives, I don't think it would have been as effective as we have for these two, as we have two actors who are essentially very much similar to their characters. They're both actors who sort of came up as sort of hip young things and found their place, and at the same time have sort of now resigned to being sort of older Hollywood stock. So you can see them obviously in many relations to their sort of character, even though unlike Rick and Cliff, they haven't sort of had to face that point where they're sort of stars fading. But certainly they've both had their time in Hollywood, and they've gone from being the hot young things to now obviously being more established names. And I think it was just sort of perfect casting to have them, and certainly they're both actors who really sort of embody these roles. I mean, obviously, DiCaprio's sort of like the charming leading man. Cliff, who's obviously sort of like the more rough and ready everyman, which Pitt has really sort of grown into, he's always sort of been like that blue collar, the sort of guy you could see yourself going for a beer with. I mean, especially once he like entered into that Fincher era of his career and started making like movies that relied on him being more than a good-looking guy shirtless, which he was. Which I remember a lot of like his early films. It's sort of like, it's Brad Pitt.
Thelma and Louise was the one.
Yeah, Thelma and Louise. It's sort of like everyone wanted to talk about Brad Pitt in his jeans, and it's sort of like, this is what his acting ability. I mean, even in like True Romance.
Back then Brad Pitt was a nobody, right? So you only realize he's in there when you watch it after he's become popular. So Brad Pitt's gone a long way. He's gone through different movies and all kinds of different things, and I think that at this point, I think that Cliff is a pretty decent role. Like, you can just see, like, he doesn't really have a whole lot of lines, but then there's a lot of, like, encounters that he meets and stuff that really kind of livens the whole thing up.
Yes, certainly one of those encounters got a lot of ire for the film, because certain owners of that property were a little upset at the treatment of that legacy. But when we obviously, like, are introduced up with the film, and we were obviously introduced to Rick, and he's on like his TV show Bounty Law, which is like a 50s western. It's kind of like Gunsmoke or Bonanza. It's as I say, it's funny because it reminded me a lot of Samuel Jackson's character in Hateful Eight. It's sort of like this idea of this bounty hunter who always brings in his bounties dead, and the amateurs try to bring him in alive, which I thought was like, that seems so familiar to what the Major was telling us in Hateful Eight. And I like as well the fact that when we look at this alternate history movie, I mean, here, as with like Inglourious Basterds, it's this idea of like, if we put these characters into history, how would things have turned out? So it's sort of like, in this case, it's sort of like, what if we put this guy Rick Dalton in these neighborhoods with the Polanskis? Would that have changed how the Manson murders had gone? Essentially, it's like what this is all building up to. And at the same time, Tarantino sort of asking the question is sort of like, if this guy Rick Dalton had been an actual movie star, like, what roles would he have been up for? What films would he have made in this period? And it's kind of fun the fact that Tarantino's been so obsessed with this character Rick Dalton. He's actually writing a book at the moment. It's sort of like a fictional filmography of the films Rick Dalton made. So he's like looking at things like Grizzly, and it's all like, if he was in Grizzly, which character would he have played? And he's, at the moment, as I say, he's working his way through and write this whole fictional history, which would be a book that he's planning on releasing in the near future, which I'm very excited to see, just to see what films he's like recasting with Rick Dalton in. But we do get little nods to that here, as we get to see it's like, what if Rick Dalton was in The Great Escape? If he played the Steve McQueen role. And it's something that I really like as well about the film, is the fact that here Tarantino's actually embracing modern technology. A lot of his previous films, he sort of shunned the idea of modern technology. He's had a very sort of old school film making aesthetic. Everything's been very anti-CGI. It's all been very sort of practical effects, and here he's obviously embracing new technology to like insert Leonardo Dicaprio into an episode of FBI, or to insert him into The Great Escape. And it's really fun when you have these like scenes that you're so familiar with, but here it is with Rick Dalton in instead. So I really like those little nods it has throughout. So,
well, I mean, obviously I'm not like, I think that the film doesn't hit me as hard as a lot of people, because a lot of old Hollywood stuff I don't really know a lot about.
Okay.
I've never really dived into that part. So a lot of these things, like you're saying now, it makes sense now that those scenes were done, and that they're supposed to be like, they inserted him into the roles of, scenes that actually existed. But prior to the recording, I didn't realize that.
Okay.
So yeah, so I mean that is a really interesting touch. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Like my knowledge of this was like I didn't really do enough research. So as you're talking about the alternate history elements, I get like what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think like now I understand, because a lot of them I couldn't really piece together while I was watching, because to me it just felt like three different elements. So you have like the Rick and Cliff element, where their friendship and their careers crumbling down and having to change directions, and then you have like the Polanski and Tate situation where they're living next door, and she's embracing this this fame that she's getting from the role that she got, and that sort of thing, and slowly we see her go into another phase of her life. And then you go to the Manson, the hippies and stuff, and then you have to look at that part again. And and again, that's the thing, is that like I really don't know too much about the murders, so I actually just quickly looked it up just now, and it's now I understand how all this pieces together.
That's right. I mean, a lot of it's just because I'm just a big nerd, so that's the only reason.
But I think the thing is that, like, because that was one of the questions I was thinking, was that when we start the film, we have this part where like near the beginning, there's this random guy who goes up to the door, and he rings he kind of shows up, and he acts like he's lost, and it almost sounds like he seems like he's like scouting the area, like scouting the house and whatever, and you see that, and it's not, and then when you go back to the end where the big I guess the big Manson type of hit gets there, you kind of realize these idiots just went to the wrong house. So it all kind of ties together, and you're just like, is it like the reason is that Dalton comes out and bothers them, right? And then they don't realize that there's a house next door, I guess.
Yeah. I can't remember who Tarantino showed the film to, because he was talking about it on the WTF podcast with Mark Maron. And you say he got to the finale, and some old school Hollywood type was like showing it to, and he's sort of like, they got to that hippie hit, and he's sort of like, they went and fucked with the wrong people, didn't they? Which I was like, that's pretty much a good analogy for the end. But I mean, I have to say that I watched this when it came out in the cinema. I was like night one there at the cinema, and I had to leave the cinema before the end, so I missed the last 30 minutes. So it was only on this viewing I've finally seen the last 30 minutes of this film. And because it's so long, it's sort of like, I don't want to go to the cinema to sit for like another 2 hours for potentially another crisis at home, and I missed the 30 minutes again. And you kind of like just like turn up to the theater and like when the last 30 minutes and go, oh, do you mind if I go and watch this last 30 minutes? Because they look at you like some weirdo. So like, it's like, who turns up for the last 30 minutes? Are you like doing a drug deal or something in here? It's like, no, I'm just a man with a crisis at home who missed the last 30 minutes the other night and trying to.
But I think that that's where it's so good, because even though I didn't know, like, I didn't understand the whole, like, I didn't know about like the Manson murders, and I didn't know the details of the whole thing, I was still able to pick that up at the end, and I thought that was such a Tarantino thing to do, I think, right? To switch it around and be like, okay, well, these idiots come by and they get asked to do it from someone else who scouted out the grounds, which wasn't them.
Yes,
because that's what you people usually do. They ask someone else to scout out land, and then they go out and do the, and then they go to the next door neighbor. It's
Manson. We obviously see at the start. He goes up to Tate's house, and then obviously as he sends his followers out to make this big statement, well, he's over in San Francisco. Because this is the thing about the Manson murders I didn't know until I watched the film myself and did the research. Because I always thought that Manson was involved in the Sharon Tate murders, but he wasn't. It was his followers that carried it out, and Tex being sort of like the ringleader who we see here. So it's just, as you said, in Tarantino world, it's just like these idiots turn up at the wrong house, but it's just a real wrong house that they turn up at.
because then like, obviously we're jumping way ahead and we're talking about the end, but I think that is so great because it does like this wrap around of something that he talked, like, especially Rick Dalton talks about at the beginning of the film, about the weapon that he that he uses at the end. And it's just so funny because after 2.5 hours of this movie. Honestly, I forgot about that conversation.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. So when he pulls it out, you're just kind of like, what? Oh my goodness, overkill. and then it's just great because you see Cliff. I think that's what's really great about Cliff's character is that Brad Pitt is really like, you see this moment where throughout the film, you really see his skills as a stuntman, whether it's driving or climbing up the fence to fix the antenna, or just doing all that stuff. And then at the end, even though he's on this like weird, supposedly is supposed to take having this acid trip of some sort, he's still able to do like, this is still very instinct to him. So he's able to still defend himself and do all this stuff, right?
Oh, definitely.
And,
so,
and giving the dog a purpose as well, because the dog's pretty much just eating dog food the whole time.
There's so much great setup throughout the film. Right from the start, I mean, where he's meeting Al Pacino's casting director Marvin Schwartz, and he's, as you say, he's talking about like this Rick Dalton movie marathon he had, and he's sort of like, I put on the 14 fists of Makowski. And it's sort of like, da, 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 da. I love all that shooting stuff. And then with the, as you said, we get to see the clip from it where he's there with the flamethrower and the eye patch, and I was like, it's so like, that's the movie I want to see him make. It's like whenever Tarantino gets a clip or something, it's all like, I really want to see the 14 fists of Makowski now. And then it's like he has a cutback within a cutback, and he's sort of like, oh yeah, I was practicing with that flamethrower, and he's sort of like, does it have to be so hard? It's like, Rick, it's a flamethrower. And at that point I was like, can we arrange for us to go and play with a flamethrower? It's sort of like, if we can like arrange that for the show for someone who's got like access to a flamethrower, just to like go to a range, so not like in someone's backyard or anything. We'll bring Heather, because I think her being an Aliens fan, I'm sure she'd want to play with a flamethrower as well. But it seemed really cool. And I love the play as well to have a character like Martin Schwartz played by Pacino, because Pacino, overplays everything. So it fits perfectly with this character, and have this little Pacino cameo as this casting director who wants, obviously, Rick to go and make films in Italy, which was sort of the course for a while. You would have like a lot of Hollywood actors whose star was sort of fading, they would go over to Italy and they would make films. So you would have people like Eastwood who weren't getting a lot of traction at the time, and then he goes over and makes like the spaghetti westerns with Sergio Leone, and comes back this huge star. And you had Michael Douglas's father, who I can't remember his name, but he went over and he did like a bunch of Italian crime movies as well. So you'd have a lot of these like big name Hollywood actors who weren't getting sort of roles in Hollywood, but they would go over to Italy and they would make films over there, and they would be like this big attraction. So it's in many ways it's like Tarantino giving us this history lesson of cinema and the change of the guard in old Hollywood. And we see it as well with like the role that he gets when he's playing a villain on Lancer, and they're talking about his costume, and he's sort of like, I don't want you to look like Rick Dalton. I want you to look like a hippie and have a Frank Zappa mustache, and look. He has him with this outfit that where he basically looks like Dennis Hopper in Easy Rider. It's sort of like this Hell's Angel look, and you can see where Hollywood is moving away from like the clean cut cowboys of like Bounty Law of like the 50s, and they're embracing this sort of like new Hollywood. So you're having like the real sort of hippie element leaking in, this sort of outlaw, the Hells Angels. These are the sort of motifs that you see coming in. And when you see Sharon Tate go to watch herself in The Wrecking Crew, and like the movie she sees beforehand, which is like CC and Company, this like biker movie, these are like the movies that Hollywood is moving towards. And it's obviously more reinforcing the idea of like how Rick is sort of like this previous generation of Hollywood, and he's sort of definitely trying to move with the times, but at the same time not trying to become this sort of faded star who just takes up bit jobs, like pushing the next guy through, which is obviously what we get highlighted by the conversation with Schwartz at the beginning, where he's sort of like, this is an old Hollywood trick where they have like some guy who was hot, and he'd be like now play the bad guy to push the new guy through. So And this is why he's obviously pushing for him to go to Italy, which obviously he does later in the film, and makes like spaghetti westerns with this work. He makes spaghetti westerns in this world with Corbucci, who was like Sergio Leone. He made very sort of like violent and dirty westerns. He made the original Django, for example, with Franco Nero. So it's fun that you have these elements of reality and they combine with the fiction. And in Tarantino's world, they blend so seamlessly, because he's just doing like, what if we made this simple little twist? Like, what if we put this character in, say with Inglourious Basterds? It's like, what if the bastards were in Nazi Germany and Hitler was going to the screening that they've decided to ambush at? Because all these things we know have happened in history, but it's sort of like, well, what if we put these guys in? How would this sort of change things? So, and I don't know, do you see this as sort of disrespectful, or just sort of like kind of like a fun what if?
I think it's just a fun what if. Like, I don't have those, like, the thing is that I think movies should be entertainment unless it's a documentary. Documentaries are the only exception, okay?
Yeah.
But when you watch a movie, I feel like there should be some type of... Because if it was just telling a story about old Hollywood, well, if we were doing exactly that, then why don't I just watch a documentary? But whereas if we do something like an alternate history, it's a fun little twist to, what could have happened. What could have changed the outcome of a situation. And that's like watching a sci-fi movie, like when you watch a time travel sci-fi movie, or like Butterfly Effect. Oh, when you change one thing, what could change the next thing, right? And that's the same thing, you don't consider those movies disrespectful because it's not based on something true, but why would you find this disrespectful? Like, I don't understand that, Like, it's the same concept with adaptations. Like, why people get really pissed off about adaptations not being exactly like the source material. And I'm like, yeah, but the content you're reading or you're playing as a game doesn't translate the same way as how is exciting as a movie is, Like, everything has to be executed differently because the amount of energy and time and your audience, what they want is going to be different. Yeah.
Now I want to sort of move on to talk a bit about Margot Robbie's portrayal of Sharon Tate. Margot Robbie, I personally think is just a phenomenal actress. From this girl that was in Wolf of Wall Street, I think she's just gone so much past. I just thought, oh wow, she's just like, some pretty girl that Scorsese got in, but she's just phenomenal. Every time I see her in whatever role she's taken on, she's just phenomenal. Like Harley Quinn, or in this case Sharon Tate. I mean, she just embodied this role of Sharon Tate. I thought she was just like perfect, from like the glasses and just the way that she carried herself, and like being sort of like always at the center of the focus here. And I think when you're watching it, it's not like you're watching Margot Robbie play Sharon Tate. It's like you're watching Sharon Tate. It's just such a good performance.
I like Margot Robbie a lot. I haven't watched a lot of the stuff that she's been in, but I think the first time I watched her was probably in The Big Short.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, where she was just talking about the stuff in a bathtub, financial terms in a bathtub, a bubble bath. Yeah,
it made so much easier to follow all the terms when you have those cutaways. It has to be said.
And then I think I saw her in Suicide Squad, and
yeah.
I think that she's such a flexible type of character, right? I mean, I also saw her Goodbye Christopher Robin, and I forgot about that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And, no, but I mean, she's really fun. And I think that I really like her whole getup in the cinema where she has her glasses on.
Yeah.
I thought that was so nice. Like, that was a part of the movie, like, honestly, some parts doesn't even look like her. And you kind of forget, I think, that she is Margot Robbie. And I do agree with that, because there are some moments I'm watching this and I forgot that, this is Margot Robbie doing the role, and she's acting out this character, which is so, I guess, interesting in a certain way, because there's a certain, I just thought the best scene that she had was when was when she went to this theater, and then she's so, like, content about the people around her reacting positively, I guess, the way that she wants them to react to the role that she's doing or what's going on the screen. And I thought that was so so fun to see. Because I wonder if actors do that, you know, like they sneak into a theater and then, you know, they just sit around and maybe not prop their bare feet up on the seat in front, because that's kind of disgusting.
Yeah, Tarantino really went into overdrive with the feet in this one, didn't he?
I know.
We've said over the course of the thing is like, since it was sort of highlighted when Death Proof came out, it sort of like became more thing to notice the feet thing. But I think with this one, he wasn't even trying to hide it. It's just front and center in like 3/4 of the movie. Just bloody dirty hippie feet everywhere.
Pretty much.
And when she puts the glasses on in the cinema, I was like, oh my god, that's gotta be like for comedic effect. And I was like looking at pictures of Sharon Tate, and she's there with the same glasses. It's like, oh my god, that's so good. But yeah, it's like, she's such a new starlet at this point. The fact that she has to convince them at the theatre of like who she is, and she's sort of like, oh, I was in Valley of the Dolls, and it's like, oh, who were you in Valley of the Dolls? It's sort of like, I'm the one that went off to make the dirty movies, and of course the guy remembers her. It's like, if you're going to be a new actress in things, always have like a good death scene or have a memorable moment. That's how people will remember you. But it's just like simple things she does with the character, like when we see her at the Playboy Mansion, or we see like her posing with her poster. It's just like lots of simple little moments that she brings such life to this character. And there are moments, I mean, obviously, that have been sort of like used to pad out a storyline when we're at the Playboy Mansion, and we've got Steve McQueen there, which felt like Damian Lewis just like saying, Tarantino, I just really want to be in your movie, just give me any role. So they've like cast a bunch of actors to play these bit roles in this Hollywood picture. So he's Steve McQueen, and he's saying about how she left one guy to go off with Polanski, and now the three of them like inseparable, because he knows that Polanski's gonna fuck up at some point, and he's gonna swoop in and get her back. And yeah, I would say it's also funny to see the Playboy Mansion, and you only got like 4 Playboy bunnies compared to like every other time we've seen the Playboy Mansion. They're just everywhere. This time we got 4 Playboy bunnies, and that was it. But I did forget to look up if they actually shot it on location. But Sharon Tate actually does wear a lot of Margot Robbie wears a lot of Sharon Tate's actual jewelry that was donated to the film by her sister Deborah. And Deborah Tate actually gave her blessings to the film. She had a in-depth conversation with Tarantino about the vision for the film and stuff, and the fact that it wasn't just the fact he was based around the Manson murders to an extent. It wasn't this sort of like exploitative thing about the legacy of her sister's death and how she obviously passed. And it was being done in this very sort of respectful manner, even referring to Margot Robbie as being a dedicated craftsman, and praising her research as Sharon prior to meeting her. So it's kind of nice in that respect, the fact that Deborah Tate obviously gave her blessing to her performance. And you know, I think it's always nice when you have the family on board, unlike Bruce Lee's family, who were rather pissed. Which seemed to be one of the things everyone was talking about prior to this. And the Bruce Lee legacy is a very difficult one, because the rights are sort of held between his wife and his daughter, who sort of handle the estate. And there's a lot of fans who feel that they're very disrespectful with his legacy. The fact that they market his likeness off to like booze and sunglasses and all this sort of like cash-in things. So there's a lot of negativity towards them, and they were very unhappy with the way that he was portrayed in this film, even though I have to say for myself, it felt like a scene that could have happened. I didn't think it was particularly tasteful, and I think Mike Moe is a phenomenal stand-in for Bruce Lee. What did you obviously think of the Bruce Lee sequences then?
I don't know. I thought it was really weird. Like, I think that if there was a problem that I had with it, that definitely would have been an issue that I had with it, because
Okay.
I felt like something was off. I don't think that the appearance wise had a problem, because I think that Mike Moe is fine.
Yeah.
As the character, he kind of fits into the Bruce Lee. It's just how the character is written feels so, I don't know, so off from. He makes Bruce Lee seem like such a prick. and Bruce Lee isn't supposed to be that type of person, I think. I think that Bruce Lee is not I don't know a lot about Bruce Lee.
Okay.
But I think that in my mind, it always feels like Bruce Lee isn't supposed to be this type of character, which is very arrogant. But I don't know. Something just didn't feel right. And I don't know. A part of me felt like it wasn't that necessary to have him in there. Like, it didn't really matter whether he was in there or not. Like, the scenes didn't make any sense other than the fact that it was for Cliff to throw Bruce Lee against a car and to have that whole encounter with Zoe Bell, who plays the who plays the wife of what's his name? I forgot. Kurt Russell's character.
Yes, Kurt Russell plays the wife of Kurt Russell's character, who's sort of like the stunt coordinator on the set there. Why can I not find any of my notes? This is really annoying to me. Yeah, Kurt Russell obviously plays Randy, and obviously Zoe Bell plays his wife Janet. Both fantastically cast, even though a bit of an odd pairing. But then again, I'm really happy to see Kurt Russell, and I'm always happy to see Zoe Bell. Zoe Bell pushed for the role of Janet, and I think she's just absolutely phenomenal. I think she really provides the explanation point of that sequence. And when it came to obviously Cliff versus Bruce, the way I always read that scene is that Bruce obviously being known for his philosophies, you know, the be water and stuff, and it's sort of like, if you got a guy there who's obviously giving his whole sort of like philosophical spiel, and he's going up against a blue collar guy like Cliff, who's obviously gonna not probably buy into all of Bruce's philosophies and stuff. And as you see, he's sort of like, when he sort of like said, "Oh, my hands are registered as deadly weapons," and he's sort of like, you know, you kill anyone, you go to jail. It's called manslaughter. And the fact that, you know, these two would butt heads, obviously in this case it's sort of, and I think the fact that because Bruce essentially comes off on the losing end, I think that upset a lot of people. Is sort of like, oh no, Bruce Lee would never lose at all, even though Bruce had many losses documented throughout his life. The fact that when you look at how this fight is playing out, obviously the first time he jumps up and he kicks him, and obviously Cliff is there as this experienced sort of like street fighting guy would be like, yeah, he's going to do that again, so I'm just going to throw him into the car when he tries this shit again on me. And I think it just, again, that provides the perfect punchline when we see Janet come out, and she's not, first of all, she's angry at the fact that Cliff's picking a fight with like one of the stars of the Green Hornet. But then again, she's more pissed about her car. It's like, what the fuck happened to my car? And I just remember that just having such a big laugh in the cinema when that happened. So, but Kurt Russell also turns up as later as the narrator, which just made me want to hear Kurt Russell narrate everything. I think he's now him, Samuel Jackson, Werner Herzog. They're just people who are just very good at narrating things, and it's good to know that when Kurt Russell like decides to tire of like doing the physical acting side of things, he can just like, you know, slip into the more comfy role of just narrating things. As to what, I don't know, but but it'd be nice to see him narrate more things.
Absolutely.
The line where with Rick Dalton's obviously where Cliff says to him, "You're fucking Rick Dalton," that's actually a line that was said to Brad Pitt when he was like starting out, and he was sort of like a struggling young starlet, and someone said to him, like, "You're fucking Brad Pitt," and he just like ad-libbed that line into this film. And I think it's so great when it comes back to like when Rick's struggling to do his lines and he's there beating himself up in his trailer, and just another phenomenal sequence where it just like just shows how far Leonardo Dicaprio's come as an actor. It's all like, do you think that the kid in Titanic would be able to do the performance he's doing here?
Well, obviously no. I mean, you know, back then it was, you know, when Leonardo first started, there was a whole different story about who he was, and I mean, even through the years and the years that followed, his roles were pretty, I guess, fixed to a certain type of character until he eventually, got casted into something a little bit more sophisticated, right, along the way.
Yeah, I think it was Scorsese picking him up as one of his guys that really pushed DiCaprio to that new level. It's the same way that Brad Pitt, when he got picked up by Fincher, it marked that evolution in their career. You can see a real marked difference in how they act and how the performances that they're giving. And I think by DiCaprio being taken under the wing of like a director like Scorsese, it sort of like really sort of drew out that talent he'd always had, because we've seen it in his early films before he became the pretty young thing of Titanic and The Beach and whatnot, when he was doing things like Basketball Diaries and This Boy's Life. The raw talent was always there, but he was just always being marketed not to his strengths. And now obviously once they have that breakout, then other directors are like, yeah, we can cast him in this role. He's no longer just like the pretty boy that we use as a marketing tool to bring people in to see films. So it was fun to see, obviously, when Brad Pitt says, you're Rick fucking Dalton, that line that was given to him, just ad-libbing it in here, and it just perfectly plays in. Like so many of these moments throughout, like that we see, like setting up to other things, like when we see the inside of his shed and we see the flamethrower there, when we see Cliff, feeding his dog, and how well trained he's got that dog, which obviously comes into play at the end as well. So I think there's a lot of stuff that when you rewatch this film, you notice all the stuff that Tarantino's setting up for like the final act. He's like constantly setting things up in the background, and stuff has always been there. He's not going to be like one of those directors who just like, yeah, the flamethrower was magically there all along. But onto the dirty hippies that are obviously living up on the Manson, up on the ranch of the Manson. Another chance as well to see Bruce Dern as the owner of Spa Ranch.
Yeah.
It's kind of nice to know. As I said, now I know who Bruce Dern is. It's kind of like good to know who he is now, because I can pinpoint him. But yeah, there's as we're obviously introduced to, the hippies because of Cliff giving one of them a lift up to the ranch in a rather uncomfortable scene, I have to say. It's with Margaret Qualley as Pussycat. I don't know. I think there's just too much of an age gap there. I don't know if they thought this was supposed to be sexy or not. I just thought it was kind of creepy.
I don't know. I mean, because I don't know how old the girl is when she filmed this, obviously. And like,
she is born 94, so...
Oh, so there's like a 30 year probably? 20, 30 year?
Yeah. Yeah, because Brad Pitt's a lot older than we assume he is. Because he looks after himself in the way that, Hollywood types can. Because they don't have the burdens of day-to-day life crashing down on them. And I love as well the fact that, isn't it nice that we see Brad Pitt with his shirt off again when he's fixing the antennae?
Well, I think it's really just giving you kind of like that opportunity to see that Brad Pitt is actually still really in shape. you never get rid of that sort of thing, right? But I mean, it is different because in some ways, if you think about it, when you watch a Tarantino movie, you watch a lot of like scantily dressed ladies a lot, but you might not watch so many, like, it's more sexed up for the ladies than it is for the men. So most men in Tarantino movies almost feel like brutes at times.
It's true. He is, but as I said, he's sort of like, he very much reminds me of like that sort of Clint Eastwood, Charles Bronson sort of like, he's sort of like, oh, if I'm gonna have like the sexy shirtless guy, he's gonna be like a Bronson sort of shirtless sexy guy. And you see this in the fact that like he puts the tool belt on and he's got his holder for his beer and stuff. Yeah. And we have that wonderful moment where he's on the roof where he's like flashing back to his like, how did I get here? And he's sort of like, maybe it was my fault. I do love the flashbacks. I mean, obviously, it's more coherent than like the early films of Tarantino. He was obviously playing around with the structure and, giving us the end at the beginning and whatnot. So it's fun that he still plays around with the structure and the timings of his film, like the fact we have flashbacks and we have flashbacks from flashbacks and stuff, and somehow it all remains coherent. And I'm actually looking forward to actually rereading the book. I've got the book on my Kindle, and it actually goes into a lot more of like the background of like Cliff and the Manson family up in the hills and stuff. So there's a lot of stuff that we see in the film that's actually flashed out even more in the book. So I'm looking forward to rereading that now I've watched this film and got it fresh in my mind again. So
okay,
because we also find out what happened to his wife, because it's up in the air. Did he kill his wife or not? I mean, what did you think?
Well, it definitely feels like maybe he did. I mean, I don't know.
But yeah, with the the Manson family up in the hills, what did you think of the Squirrel Ranch sequence? Because I thought it was like so insanely tense. Like there's so many moments of that where it just thinks like, oh my god, this is really going to go south real quick.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it really felt like that the scene itself was structured so that it would feel like, oh well, because there's so many of them and just one of him. That the moment he steps into this, and as you see, like, kind of the friction and the tension in the conversation, you kind of start seeing that something bad might happen, obviously. But we also know through the film that Cliff can more than enough take care of himself, and it's not going to be a bunch of a bunch of people who are staring at him weird that's going to change that.
Yeah, and obviously this is another bit of real life history making its way into the Tarantino film, and it's when it comes to like obviously with Spar Ranch where they used to shoot all these westerns. There's a scene where we see in the background there's a ranch hand heading some horses, and that's actually supposed to be Donald Shorty Shear, who was one of the sort of ranch hand on that George Spar had hired, and he had warned him about the Manson family and felt that these hippies were dangerous, and at one point he'd been like killed and dismembered around the ranch, and it's said that the killer that killed him was Steve Clem Grogan, who's the hippie that we see being beat up because he slashes Cliff's tire. So again, if Cliff had been around, then Steve Clem would have been beaten up by him, according to Tarantino. So, but no, that whole sequence where you obviously see George, and obviously here played by Bruce Dern. This was a role that was supposed to have been played by originally cast with Burt Reynolds in the role, but unfortunately he died before they were able to complete filming. So Tarantino likes to brag that he's got the final footage of Burt Reynolds acting on film, because he showed a bunch of test footage with him in the Bruce Dern role, but yeah, unfortunately he passed away before they were able to complete the film, so sadly we never got to see him in that role. But I think Bruce Dern does an interesting role, even though I wasn't particularly sure what was supposed to be going on with his character. It's a great scene, obviously setting up, and you obviously get the idea of who some of these players are within the Manson family, like Tex and Squeaky. So when they obviously turn up later, it's not like, oh, who are these random people turning up? You get an idea of who these people are and why they would be obviously doing what they're doing. But as we obviously get towards the end of the film, and obviously they're coming back from Italy, where Rec's been obviously out there making these movies. He's got married. He's a much older actor, and I like the fact that they aged him up. They uglied him up a bit as well. He's got really hairy arms for whatever reason. Which I only noticed when I was like, when he's making drinks, it's like, God, he's got hairy arms. He's like a gorilla all of a sudden. As we obviously build to that wonderful sort of sequence at the end where the Manson family burst in on the wrong people and soon find out why. Did you notice that when Cliff's feeding his dog, what the flavors of dog food were?
Yes. Oh my goodness. Rat flavor and raccoon flavor.
Just like chow down, dog. So I love as well the fact that whereas Rick's obviously living up in the Hollywood Hills and he's living on a trailer by the drive-in, which is just an absolute shithole of a place. But yeah, as I said, I think the whole film I really enjoy it. I mean, it's like I say, it's close to 3 hours runtime, but I just didn't feel it with this film. Unlike like Django Unchained or Hateful Eight, I was just fully invested in this story and the way it's going. It just moves at such a quick pace. There's so many things to see and do, and the performance is so engaging. I just had a really great time throughout with it.
Yeah, I mean, the movie itself is pretty entertaining. I think that as you piece everything together, I mean, I've never faulted Tarantino with anything that, with this sort of stuff, but with like his scripting and just how he tells his stories. But when my main issue is just really, the runtime a lot of times that doesn't hold up to the story that he's trying to tell. And this one, while it feels a little bit like it jumps everywhere, I think that once you get a context of what's going on and everything's really set up, it really does flow well enough into each other then. And the performances and the characters are so engaging that somehow it feels a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to say though, I think one of my favorite characters was the little girl. The whole interaction was just so fantastic.
Oh, and she's like, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Just like when they're talking about her book, and he realizes that the stud breaker in his book is essentially him. I mean, that's that realization. He's not the star he once was, and you actually feel for him. But I think she does give this really, really mature performance that we see from her, and it is really good. And when she like leans over to him, then just like, that's the best acting I've ever seen.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like he's earned her respect, the respect of this small child. And the fact he's gone in as this like bit player, he's just there to play the villain of the week, and yet he's given this performance that's like this scene-stealing performance. He's just like pushed himself out there and like realized he can still do it. And especially when you see him like when he's doing the scene to start with, and he just like keeps screwing up his lines, he can't remember anything, and he like goes and says, if you don't do this, I'm gonna go and blow your brains out. I'm gonna go and spear my brains all over my pool. And just has this like prep talk to himself. And there's, as I said, there's so many simple bits for his character, like when he's doing his lines and he's got him on this little tape recorder and stuff, and how he spends his evenings like just drinking whiskey sours out by the pool and stuff. And there's so many like little aspects to both their characters that just like really make them seem like more than just like characters in a Tarantino movie. They're just like, they feel like they could actually be real people, and this is like that somehow you're getting this sort of snapshot to the past, even though it's wildly fantastical in places. Although the painting of Rick on his garage is actually inspired by Lee Von Cleef, who had one of his own paintings on his garage.
Okay.
Because, just in case he forgot where he lives, I mean, he could just go, oh, there I am. I really I enjoyed it. I think it's great, and Tarantino only really sort of lets himself go a little wild with the blood-soaked finale of it, which is just it's violent, but at the same time it pushes it into such a comedic lens at the end.
Right. Yeah. It is. Yeah.
I think obviously being topped up by him flamethrowing a hippie in his pool. Which I was trying to think is sort of like, when I was looking at the fire stunts in it, it's sort of like, I think that's the most people I've seen involved in like a full body burn sequence, when he's like doing the toasting the Nazis at the beginning, and then I was like, when he's like hits with the flamethrower in the pool is all like, oh, I don't think I've ever seen someone in a pool get hit with a flamethrower either. So
yeah,
quite a few firsts in that respect. And then I wanted to go off and watch Don't Go Into the House, which is just a really cool horror flick. So about a guy who has this like metal room and just like brings women back to then burn them alive with a flamethrower. So yeah, this obviously brings us to the end of our Tarantino season. Before we go, as always, we like to ask, what's been the best film, what's been the one to burn, and what's our hidden gems. So where do you want to start with the Tarantino filmography, Kim?
I don't know. We can start with the best, I guess.
Okay.
What's your best?
Kill Bill Volume 1.
Okay.
I had to say Kill Bill Volume 1. I had to think for a minute because I was like, was Inglourious Basterds my favorite? Was this my favorite? And I was like, no, it's Kill Bill Volume 1 because that's the one I've seen the most. And I saw that like 4 times in the cinema, and I think it still totally stands up. Like all the beats of it just are like so good. I mean, like the Sonny Chiba sections, the Gordon Liu sections, like the fight with Go-Go and the Crazy 88. Just throughout, I think it's just a phenomenal movie. It's not just like true to like kung fu movies, but also pop samurai movies. It's like so many of my favorite things just like embodied by this one film. And I think, yeah, while it might not be his most artistic vision, I think it's, for myself, it was like just like fanboy Nirvana seeing Kill Bill Volume 1. What about yourself?
Oh, definitely Inglourious Basterds.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
oh.
I mean, I haven't seen that one the most. That's because this was, for the show, it was the first time that I watched it. But I can definitely see myself, if any of the movies, I would go back to watch Inglourious Basterds. It was just so fun. It was just like you really didn't see the time go by, and everything was just so entertaining. I think it's just such a great addition to his filmography, which to me was, I have to say, this was a rough season. This was a rough season for myself.
So what was the worst then? Because I mean, as I said, this was such a rough season for yourself. I mean, I had issues with it just because I think that I didn't realize just how talked out on Tarantino we are. It's sort of like, well, what do we do that people haven't heard 100 times before? So I think that was the difficulty compared to like our other seasons where I think the directors aren't, especially when faced like Paul W.S. Anderson,
yeah,
where it's like you're going back and you're reevaluating someone's work who has got a lot of depth to it and is more than just Resident Evil movies, or like even like with Del Toro and Sofia Coppola, there's the hidden gems there, I think. But yeah, this one was surprisingly tough. But yeah, where was the low point then of this season for you?
I have to say though, it's really hard to decide a low point. Because, I mean, the main thing is, I think that in the end, because how long these films are, it all dials down to what movie I would not watch again. Yeah. Since a lot of them, like I said, was first-time watches. And I had originally wanted to say Kill Bill Volume 2. But I thought about it a little bit more. And the movie that I would never go watch again would probably be Django Unchained, which puts it in my worst. I don't have like, I don't know, that movie, I could rewatch it for Christoph Waltz, and that would be about the only reason why I'd rewatch it. Everything else was just so grating to watch. Like, I just felt so tired of the movie. And I felt like there was no surprises. It was really one of Tarantino's, to me, in terms of script, it was just so predictable. It was like something he had already done before. It gave me no surprises, and I felt like it just didn't have that type of excitement. Sure, there was that big shootout at the end where it was kind of crazy, but I don't think that it really delivered to me at least. I didn't think it was that fun to watch. I just thought it was so tiresome.
Yeah, I'm very much in the same boat, even though for this particular viewing I did actually enjoy it more than I've done previous times. I think when Christoph Waltz leaves that film, that the film sort of struggles, and I'm not, as I've gone on record before saying, I'm not the biggest Jamie Foxx fan, even though I think he did a very good job as playing Django. Because obviously he can ride and do all the cowboy stuff, and that, which was great. And to think that, this is a role originally offered to Will Smith, I don't think that he would have had the rawness that Jamie Foxx obviously brought to that role. But I think when it came, I'm not a huge Western fan as well, so it had two detrimental facts going for it already. But I think when Christoph Waltz sort of like leaves the film, it felt that it sort of loses its way. As it's sort of like, oh, we're going to knock this character down and then we're going to rebuild him back up again. And I was just like, not really in the place to sort of like felt like rebuilding it. And plus we'd lost another key character at that point as well, because DiCaprio bows out at the same time. But I think it's got a really underrated performance by Samuel Jackson in it for sure. I think he's off the rails, insane.
So when we did the show for Django Unchained, we had talked about Jamie Foxx and we talked about Samuel Jackson. I don't think the performances was the problem. I just really had issue with like the whole execution and the whole like pacing. It's just not intriguing. Like, it's not fun. It's not a fun time, Like, there were certain moments that were okay. That was very Tarantino, and it was okay. But
yeah,
I guess it's just the Western element, probably, because I'm not a big fan of Westerns, and it was just really slow, and I just really didn't, I just couldn't get into it. And that's just like it's obviously a personal thing. So
okay. And finally, on to our hidden gem of the season. Which film do you think deserves a little more respect than the people tend to give it? Which is the most overlooked film in your opinion?
I really don't know. I'm struggling between Jackie Brown and Reservoir Dogs right now. I can't decide which one is more of a hidden gem.
For myself, it was Jackie Brown.
Yeah.
And I think it's because I got older. When I first watched it, I didn't really get it because I was, a young punk-ass kid, like in school and stuff. So I didn't really get the maturity of the characters' relationships. And now, obviously, coming into it as an older viewer, and I mean, I always appreciate the fact Pam Grier is it, because Pam Grier is never a bad time when you're having a movie, but coming back to it now and also being like a Robert Forster fan as well, it was sort of like, oh, it was just really great, even though it is essentially just one big convoluted bag swap by the end. I think that Robert Forster and Pam Grier are just phenomenal in that film, and for myself, I think it's worth going back and reevaluating. Go back as if you're like me, a little older, a little wiser. Well, not so much wiser. But go back and check it out, and you may feel a bit different. And I think Tarantino said before, it's sort of like the older audiences tend to really like Jackie Brown more. So
yeah, I would agree with that. I think that, obviously this is my first time watching Jackie Brown for the show. And to me, I think that in certain ways of like how much people talk about it or what's compared to it, I think Reservoir Dogs definitely gets a lot more talk than Jackie Brown does. And for that, I think hidden gem wise, I'm definitely leaning more towards Jackie Brown in that sense. Because it was a really enjoyable movie. The whole concept of how, there's kind of like a double going down and all these characters, and then the timeline kind of fits in a funny way together type of thing. There's a lot of things to really enjoy about it, and a lot of visually really cool moments, and Pam Grier is fantastic. I think that there's so much to love about it that I really feel like people don't talk about this movie enough. But I guess, in a world where Tarantino movies is about spraying blood like in Kill Bill and stuff like that, and like a culture clash and alternate histories, Jackie Brown kind of falls into that little like space where it feels like it doesn't really it's not really in the Tarantino that everybody knows, I guess.
No, there's no real sort of elements that really sort of made it into the pop culture, as you said already. When you think like Reservoir Dogs, it's so ingrained. There's so many elements of Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction that are just like so constantly referenced in pop culture. Even like Kill Bill gets like referenced in popular culture and stuff. We see all these elements. It's all like when you see people like dressed in like the suits, and they do like you hear like Steelers Wheel, or you hear like a piece of the soundtrack, and it's all like your mind instantly goes to these films. But yeah, I think, as I said, Jackie Brown is sort of like the thing I think it needs a little more credit than it deserves. I think a lot of people sort of sleep on it, and it's kind of a shame.
Yeah, definitely agree with that.
So yeah, that's it. Another season done. Thank you as always for listening. If you haven't done already, please do hit the like and subscribe button wherever you happen to listen to us. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, where we post things. And also check out our blog, moviesandteapodcast.wordpress.com, especially on Fridays, where we post up our Friday Film Club, where both myself and Kim both pick a movie to highlight. Sometimes the theme, sometimes it's not. Either way, it's a chance for us to highlight more of the movies that we love and adore, and think you should be checking out as well. But make sure you stick around and check out our After Hours, which will be coming up shortly. We got some interesting films lined up for our After Hours portion, including our Shark Week episode. But yeah, make sure you definitely stick around and check out our After Hours episode, which will be coming up in the next coming weeks. And look out for our new season coming very soon, as we got something very special planned for it. But we're not going to give that away just yet. But thank you, listeners, as always, and thank you to my co-host Kim. And we will see you once again here in the booth for another round of movies and tea. But until then, good night.